now, since the last lesson, I got very excited about talking about the back and forth. I could talk for hours about the back and forth. So I am quite impressed that I kept it so short for you. As always, please let me know any feedback. We want to keep improving this learning. This is obviously the first, uh, first inception of all of this. And this is just a real effort to get this learning out to you, to try and help impact your life on a real on a real day-to-day basis. So let's keep refining our understanding of meditation by talking about the synapses of the brain. And like I said in the last lesson, this is coming back to the idea that meditation changes your brain on a molecular level. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time convincing you that meditation is something that you should be doing. If you've made it this far, you've already got that inkling. What I am going to do is include some links to some great quality research around meditation. My hero and my go-to in this field is Richard Davidson. I'll also include some incredible videos and interviews that he's done over the years. But the science speaks for itself. Meditation is one of the most helpful things that we can do for ourselves. It is something that changes our brain on a molecular level. It reduces anxiety. It improves cognitive function. It improves quality of sleep. The list is endless. Like, it just feels like it just keeps getting longer and longer with the more research that goes into meditation. So again, that's going to be the end of my spiel about how great meditation is in terms of changing you as a human being. Not that we want to necessarily identify things that are wrong with us, but we want to connect with who we really are. Again, that comes back to the idea of shifting out of distress, where we're not really ourselves because we're in this fight or flight reactive state. We want to come back to eustress. You are you in eustress because you are responsive. You are not in a state of fight or flight. So you are showing up as yourself without all these masks to protect yourself. That is what meditation allows us to do. And that rabbit hole just keeps getting longer and longer and longer. There is no ceiling to this. I have never met anyone who has ever said, yeah, and I've been meditating for 30, 40 years. I've stopped now because, it's just got as good as it can get. Everyone, everyone from all across the world says it's just an ongoing training, an ongoing practice, because it's part of the journey of unfolding. It's a part of the journey of unpacking and discovering what is possible in states of eustress, what is possible when you're connected to yourself and not continuously connecting to all these things that are draining you, that are adding to your distress. So if we come back to the idea of meditation changing your brain on a molecular level, what we're actually saying is that the synapses in your brain start to fire in different ways, and they start to create different networks in the brain. Now, not being a neuroscientist, I love to use analogies, and then I love to reference neuroscientists to back up the science. So again, you'll find some research in the notes underneath. The analogy that I love to use when we're talking about this is living in a village, and my best friend lives in the village across the way, and in between these two villages is a huge field of long grass. And what this analogy does is helps us understand the natural process of the brain that people have come to call neuroplasticity. And this is a huge word out there now. Neuroplasticity gets thrown around a lot. Only 5, 6 years ago, it took a lot of unpacking for people to understand what neuroplasticity was. And I think that goes to show just how much we, as a culture, we've opened ourselves up to the idea and trusted in the science that neuroplasticity is a natural process of the brain. And for those who are unfamiliar with the word, like I was 5 years ago, neuroplasticity is basically the idea that the brain is pliable, that the brain is always changing. It's a little bit like Play-Doh, that we can keep molding it, but we're not remolding the shape of it. We're remolding the wires in it. So we're continuously rewiring, we're continuously changing that inner shape of the brain and the way that it all connects. Now, most of the time we're doing that unconsciously because we will repeat behaviors over and over again, or we will repeat thinking over and over again, and that will keep firing the synapses to keep traveling down this particular road in the brain. And this is where we come back to the field of grass in between the two villages. So this is the neuroplasticity analogy. And I want to go visit my best mate in the other village, but I haven't actually walked there myself yet. So I just head off into the long grass. And this is like forging a new pathway in your brain. And this happens every time we practice something new. So every time you do something new, it's like walking through long grass. That's what the synapses are doing in terms of your brain. They are traveling down a newly formed highway that's getting built or created as it almost travels down it for that very first time. Uh, when we reach the village on the other side and catch up with our best mate, and then it's time to go home, we can sort of see where we've gone, yeah, because the grass is downtrodden. This is like the synapse just traveling back and forth in those early days. Okay, the pathway is there in the brain, but it's not formed. It's not concreted yet. Then I go a couple of days. I've seen my best mate. That's awesome. I've got a bit of work to do. A couple of days goes by. I go back to the path that I traveled, and I can't see it anymore. The grass is now standing straight. This is how neuroplasticity works. If we don't keep practicing or activating that pathway in the brain, then it's going to disintegrate over time. And when we go back to performing whatever the behavior or the activity was, it's going to feel like we're doing it again for the first time, or it's going to feel like a little bit more challenging, or just as challenging, sorry. Or perhaps it'll just still feel clunky. We'll have memories of doing it the first time, so we'll have picked up, learnings along the way, but it still doesn't feel like a natural or an easy process yet. Again, this is like walking back through the grass and looking for that pathway and it not being there. Now, if I am disciplined and I say, okay, I'm gonna be the best friend ever. I'm gonna go see my best mate every day, and I'm gonna walk past and I'm gonna walk back and forth, back and forth. Over time, that pathway is going to be etched into the grass, so that it gets to the point that I don't even need to think where my next footstep is going to be. I just actually am just walking up and down that pathway without actually really needing to think about it at all. This is what happens in the brain when we establish a new habit. This is what happens in the brain when we create a new pathway for the synapses to travel down. And this is what we talk about when we're talking about meditation, creating molecular change in the body. So when I meditate, I am task switching, noticing that, and coming back. That back and forth is like walking back and forth between those villages through the long grass. Every time I do that, I'm carving out that pathway in the brain. I'm carving out that ability to notice when I've task switched and come back, to notice when I've task switched and come back. The more you do this, the more refined that ability comes. The more refined that ability becomes, the more you're able to use it. And then, like anything, it unlocks more abilities for you. Specifically here, it unlocks the ability to be able to decide what you're going to task switch to very clearly and very powerfully. To start that process, we need to start walking in between the villages. We need to start understanding that every time you meditate, you are firing different networks and allowing synapses to travel down new pathways in the brain. If we get stuck in that ruminating around the negative or worrying about what's going to come the next day, you're just firing the same distress pathways that we've been firing. And that's why we're here, to start traveling or accessing and creating different pathways in the brain so that then we can create a highway in the brain that allows us to drive into eustress. The brain changes at a molecular level when we meditate consistently. It will feel great after a couple, just like it'll feel great going to see my best mate for a little while, but it's not going to actually concrete or cement anything in. It's not going to ingrain the pathway. We need to be consistent with it. And that is why keeping this stuff as easy as possible is so essential. So every time we engage with that back and forth process, now that we understand we need the distraction, we're not forcing the focus, we're using the distraction, we also now know that we are helping the brain create new pathways. And then the more that we use those pathways, the more ingrained those pathways can become. We are utilizing the natural ability of the brain, which is neuroplasticity. And you are doing that all the time, whether it's making a cup of coffee in the morning, whether it's going through, the conversation with, the first person you see at work, driving a car, reading a book. You have created millions of pathways up until now in the brain that you just travel all the time. Synapses just know how to fire and travel down. Most of those are more than likely made unconsciously. And progress comes from being able to establish and create your own highways and being very, very deliberate in the way that your brain is forming pathways. Again, this is why meditation is so essential, because focus is where this all comes back to. Knowing where my focus is. If I become distracted, I'm firing some different pathways in the brain, not ones that I want to. So let's come back and fire the pathways that we want to fire. Focus is essential, and that's why we exercise the focus with meditation. That's why meditation has been around for thousands of years, because it's so, so important to every moment of our lives. And the beauty of it is that it's fun to meditate, and it feels great. And it's just that refresher during the day, that way, that moment for the body and mind to rejuvenate. There are so many benefits to it. We're only talking about one angle of it in terms of the neuroplasticity and the strengthening the focus. So keep all of that in mind. Again, delve into the science if you'd like. I've spent the last 5 years doing. Use those links that are under this lesson to do that. And we are going to now move into the next lesson and talk about how to start actually achieving all of this. Hopefully, we've already started to redefine the concept of meditation for you. Hopefully, you're already starting to feel like, okay, I know how to do all the warm-up now. I've been practicing, that 5-minute meditation from the action in module 2. That's the warm-up in terms of firing all those eustress messages. Now I'm ready to dive into the exercise after I've done that warm-up. Hey, you've already done half the work. Meditation is super simple to learn. So we're almost there. Well done. I'll see you in the next lesson. And as always, keep asking questions, keep giving me that feedback, and I will see you very soon.